Have you ever spent a whole weekend breaking your back with a shovel, turning over heavy clumps of dirt, only to watch your plants struggle to grow just a few weeks later? What if I told you that every time you dig, you are actually destroying the very thing that guarantees a massive, effortless harvest? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about the ultimate secret to lazy gardening, a method so simple it almost feels like cheating. I am going to show you how adding just one single, specific handful of organic material to your garden can cause native earthworms to multiply overnight. By the end of this video, you will understand how to triple your harvest of vegetables and fruits without ever buying synthetic fertilizer or renting a heavy tiller again. But I have to warn you, what you are about to hear goes against everything traditional gardening books have taught us for the last 50 years. So, are you someone who loves to dig every spring? Or are you ready to let nature do the hard work for you? Let me know your gardening style in the comments right now. To truly understand why this method works like magic, we have to look at how nature has been growing massive, ancient forests for millions of years without a single drop of liquid chemical fertilizer. In a natural forest ecosystem, nobody is coming around with a rototiller in the spring. Nobody is bagging up the fallen leaves or spraying synthetic nitrogen. Instead, plants and trees rely on a massive, invisible workforce living just beneath the surface. The undisputed kings of this underground workforce are the earthworms. They are the great recyclers of the natural world, taking dead, decaying organic matter and transforming it into the most potent, perfectly balanced plant food on the planet. But in our modern home gardens, we have starved them, exposed them to harsh sun by constantly flipping the soil, and driven them away. The secret to a high-yielding, low-effort garden is not about feeding the plant directly. It is entirely about feeding the soil biology, specifically the worms, and letting them feed the plants. Once you understand how to attract and multiply these incredible creatures, your gardening life will change forever. Let us start by addressing the biggest mistake most well-meaning gardeners make every single season. We have been brainwashed into believing that the only way to get big tomatoes and heavy branches of fruit is to pour brightly colored liquid chemicals or synthetic powders around the base of our plants. But using synthetic fertilizers is exactly like feeding a human nothing but sugary energy drinks. Sure, you get a massive, immediate spike in growth, but it comes at a terrible cost. Those chemical salts slowly burn and dehydrate the microscopic life in the soil, including our precious earthworms. They turn the dirt into a sterile, lifeless sponge that can only hold up your plants, forcing you to keep buying more chemicals every year just to keep the garden alive. It is a vicious, expensive cycle of addiction for your garden beds. When you stop using these harsh products, you invite the natural biology back in, setting the stage for a self-sustaining ecosystem where the soil actually gets richer and more fertile with every passing year, rather than more depleted and tired. So, what exactly makes the earthworm such a miracle worker for the lazy gardener? Think of an earthworm not just as a slimy bug, but as a microscopic biological bulldozer mixed with a highly advanced chemical factory. As they move through the dark layers of your garden, they literally eat their way forward. They consume dead leaves, decaying roots, and organic matter, passing it through their unique digestive tract. Inside their bodies, that dead waste is mixed with specialized enzymes and beneficial bacteria. What comes out the other end is called a worm casting, and it is absolute black gold. These castings contain 5 times more nitrogen, 7 times more phosphorus, and 11 times more potassium than the surrounding soil. More importantly, these nutrients are wrapped in a protective mucus that prevents them from washing away in the rain. Instead, they release slowly over time, providing a constant, perfect drip feed of nutrition exactly when your plant roots need it the most. Having a healthy population of worms is literally having an army of gardeners working 24 hours a day entirely for free. Now, when people hear about the magic of worms, their first instinct is to pull out their credit card. They go online, spend $50 or $100 on a box of red wigglers or night crawlers, and excitedly dump them directly into their garden beds. But a week later, they dig around and cannot find a single one. Why does this happen? Because dumping live worms into a sterile, depleted garden is like dropping a person in the middle of a desert without food or water. If the environment is harsh, dry, and lacks the specific food sources they need, those expensive worms will simply migrate deep underground or travel right across the property line into your neighbor's yard. You cannot buy a healthy ecosystem in a cardboard box. The secret is not to buy imported worms, but to ring the dinner bell for the native earthworms that are already living deep down in your local soil. You just have to give them a reason to come up to the surface, stay in your garden beds, and start multiplying right where your plant roots are growing. This brings us to the core secret, the magic handful that changes everything. You do not need expensive rock dust, complicated compost teas, or hard-to-find ingredients. The ultimate trigger for explosive earthworm reproduction is a simple mixture of two things you probably already have in your kitchen right now. I am talking about ordinary, dry, rolled oats and used coffee grounds. It sounds almost too simple to be true, doesn't it? But there is incredible biological science behind this specific combination. By mixing these two ordinary household waste products, you are creating a superfood that perfectly mimics the absolute best conditions found on a rich forest floor. This mixture provides the exact ratio of fast energy, proteins, and physical grit that worms need to shift from simple survival mode into massive reproduction mode. It is the ultimate paradox of smart gardening, where the garbage from your morning routine becomes the catalyst for the most explosive, vibrant growth your backyard has ever seen. Let us break down why used coffee grounds are so incredibly powerful in this mixture. Many people worry that coffee is too acidic for the garden, but the brewing process actually washes most of the acid right into your cup, leaving the used grounds at a very neutral, earthworm-friendly pH. But the real magic is physical. Earthworms do not have teeth. Just like chickens, they have a muscular organ called a gizzard. To grind up the tough organic matter they eat, they need to swallow tiny abrasive particles. Used coffee grounds provide the absolute perfect microscopic grit for a worm's digestive system, allowing them to process food twice as fast. Furthermore, the strong, earthy aroma of the coffee grounds acts as a massive attractant. It seeps down into the subsoil with the morning dew, acting like a beacon. It signals to every native worm within a 10-foot radius that a massive, easy-to-digest food source is waiting for them near the surface. They simply cannot resist making the journey upward. The second half of our magic handful is the ordinary rolled oat, and this is where the rapid multiplication happens. Oats are an absolute powerhouse of carbohydrates and plant-based proteins. But the worms do not actually eat the dry oats directly. When you introduce oats to moist garden soil, they quickly begin to break down and colonize with massive amounts of beneficial white fungi and soil bacteria. This microscopic fuzz is the absolute favorite food of the earthworm. It is the equivalent of a highly nutritious, easily digestible smoothie for them. The massive spike in calories and protein they get from consuming this oat-fueled fungal network gives them an excess of energy. In the animal kingdom, when energy is abundant and the environment is safe, the biological response is to reproduce. The oats provide the exact nutritional profile required for worms to start producing cocoons at an unbelievable rate, flooding your garden with the next generation of tiny workers. Creating this potent mixture is incredibly easy, but the ratio is important for the best results. You want to mix roughly 1 part used coffee grounds to 1 part dry rolled oats in a bucket. Why must they be mixed together? If you apply thick clumps of pure coffee grounds, they can dry out and form a hard, water-repellent crust on the surface of your soil, locking oxygen out. If you apply a massive pile of pure oats, it can turn into a slimy, sour mess that might attract the wrong kind of bacteria. But by mixing them evenly, the granular texture of the coffee grounds keeps the oats separated and aerated, creating a friable, breathable feast. I like to toss them together with my hands until it looks like a textured, speckled crumble. You can also add just a tiny sprinkle of water to the bucket to slightly awaken the starches in the oats before you take it out to the garden. This small prep step ensures the biological breakdown starts the second it touches your soil. Now, the method of application is crucial because if you just throw this handful out onto bare dirt under the hot sun, it will not work at all. Earthworms are strictly photophobic, which means bright sunlight is deadly to them, paralyzing and drying out their skin within minutes. They will absolutely refuse to come to the surface to eat if the food is exposed to the light. The proper way to serve this feast is to go to your vegetable bed or the base of your fruit tree and gently pull back the top layer of mulch, wood chips, or dead leaves. Expose the dark, damp surface of the soil. Then, take just one small handful of your oat and coffee mixture and sprinkle it lightly over a 1 square foot area. Do not pile it up like a mountain, just scatter it like you are feeding chickens. Once you have scattered the handful, immediately pull the mulch back over it, completely hiding the food in total darkness. You have just set the perfect underground trap. Covering the handful with mulch does more than just block out the sunlight. It creates what I call the blanket effect, which is the secret to moisture control. Earthworms breathe entirely through their skin, which means their skin must stay constantly moist. If the environment becomes dry, they will immediately dive deep underground to escape dehydration, ignoring your food entirely. By placing your handful of oats and coffee under a thick layer of straw, grass clippings, or shredded autumn leaves, you are creating a protected microclimate. As the sun beats down during the day, the mulch prevents evaporation. When the night cools down, the mulch traps the morning dew, keeping the feeding zone perfectly damp like a wrung-out sponge. This consistent moisture allows the fungi to bloom on the oats rapidly and ensures the worms can comfortably stay near the surface to feed 24 hours a day, regardless of how hot the weather gets above ground. What happens in the first 24 hours after you lay down this mixture is nothing short of a biological miracle. As the evening temperatures drop and the moisture sets in, the scent of the coffee and the biological activity of the oats begin to penetrate the deeper layers of clay and dirt. Deep below, the dormant native worms detect this chemical shift. Slowly, they begin their vertical migration, navigating through the tiny cracks and pores of the earth. By the time the sun rises the next morning, dozens of worms will have congregated directly beneath your handful. Under the safety of the mulch, they begin to gorge themselves on the fungal bloom and the gritty coffee particles. Because the food requires almost zero effort to digest, their bodies rapidly absorb the nutrients. In just one single day, you have successfully shifted the center of biological activity in your garden directly to the root zone of your growing vegetables, where it matters most. Within a week or two of consistent feeding, the reproduction boom begins. Because you have provided an environment with perfect darkness, steady moisture, and an abundance of high-protein food, the worms go into overdrive. 2 healthy earthworms can produce a cocoon every week under these optimal conditions. These cocoons look like tiny yellowish-brown lemons, no bigger than a grain of rice. Inside each one of these tiny capsules, up to 20 baby worms are incubating. Because the surrounding soil is now rich and soft from the adult worm's activity, when these babies hatch, their survival rate is near 100%. They immediately begin feeding on the remaining microparticles of your oat mixture. In a remarkably short amount of time, a few dozen native worms can multiply into hundreds and then thousands. You are exponentially increasing your garden's workforce with nothing more than a few pennies worth of kitchen scraps. As this massive, multiplying population eats through your handfuls, they are leaving behind a trail of pure magic. The worm castings. Let us talk about why this changes everything for your plants. Synthetic fertilizers dump a massive load of soluble nutrients all at once, which often washes away in the rain or literally burns the delicate root hairs of your tomatoes and peppers. Worm castings act entirely differently. As the worms deposit this black gold throughout the top layer of your soil, they are creating thousands of tiny, slow-release fertilizer capsules. These castings hold moisture incredibly well and contain humic acid, which acts as a chelator. That means it unlocks heavy minerals already in your soil, like iron and calcium, making them instantly accessible to your plants. You can literally plant a delicate seedling directly into pure worm castings, and it will never burn. It is the ultimate, foolproof plant food, manufactured directly on site by your new underground army. But the benefits go far beyond just fertilization. This is where the true lazy gardening aspect comes into play. As thousands of earthworms move up to eat your coffee and oats, and then move back down to digest and rest, they are essentially plowing your garden from the inside out. They create miles and miles of tiny, interconnected tunnels. These tunnels act as microscopic drainage pipes. When a heavy spring rainstorm hits, instead of the water pooling on the surface and drowning your plants, it instantly drains down into these worm tunnels, storing moisture deep below ground. During a dry spell, these same tunnels act as oxygen vents, allowing air to reach the deep roots, which prevents rot and disease. Your hard, compacted clay soil slowly transforms into a spongy, chocolate cake texture. You literally never need to plunge a heavy garden fork or a gas-powered rototiller into that bed again. The worms are doing all the heavy lifting, 24 hours a day. Let us look at exactly how this structural change directly impacts the roots of your vegetables. Plant roots are remarkably intelligent, but they are also naturally lazy. When a young pepper plant or a sprawling pumpkin vine wants to grow deep, it looks for the path of least physical resistance. In a heavily tilled garden, the soil often settles and forms a hardpan layer just a few inches down, stopping roots in their tracks. But in a garden filled with our multiplied worms, the roots discover the thousands of abandoned worm tunnels. The roots will literally shoot straight down these open highways. Not only is it physically effortless for the plant to grow deep, but these tunnels are completely lined with nutrient-rich worm castings. It is like the plant has discovered a pre-paved highway coated in vitamins. The result is a root system that grows twice as massive, twice as fast, leading to significantly larger, stronger plants that can easily support the weight of heavy, abundant fruit. This method is not just restricted to your raised vegetable beds. It works absolute wonders for fruit trees and berry shrubs as well. Most tree roots feed right at the surface, in an area called the drip line, which is the circle right under the outer edge of the branches. If you rake back the leaves under your apple tree or blueberry bush and apply this magic handful of oats and coffee around that drip line, you trigger the exact same biological explosion. The earthworms will multiply, coming up to eat the mixture and pulling the decaying autumn leaves down into the root zone. They establish an incredible symbiotic relationship with the fungal networks attached to the tree roots. This deep, gentle aeration and natural fertilization results in trees that are highly resistant to drought. When harvest time comes, you will notice a significant difference. The branches will be heavier, the apples will be crisper, and the berries will be noticeably sweeter, all thanks to the underground work of the worms. I want to take a moment to firmly bust the biggest myth in modern gardening, the idea that deep tilling is necessary for a good harvest. When you fire up a rototiller and violently churn the earth 8 inches deep, you feel like you are doing a great job, because the dirt looks fluffy on day one. But what you have actually done is catastrophic. The spinning blades slice millions of native earthworms to pieces. You completely shred the delicate fungal networks that your plants rely on. Even worse, you drag thousands of dormant weed seeds up from the darkness and expose them to the sunlight, guaranteeing you will spend your summer pulling weeds. By the time July rolls around, that tilled dirt collapses back into a rock-hard block. By switching to the magic handful method, feeding the surface and never digging, you protect the soil structure. You keep weed seeds buried in the dark, and you preserve the beautiful, natural architecture that the worms have spent months building for you. Timing is an important factor when applying this method. While you can feed your worms anytime the ground is not frozen, there are 2 golden windows for maximum impact. The first is early spring, right around April, just as the soil begins to warm up. Applying the handfuls now wakes the biology up and gives the worms time to multiply and build up a massive reserve of castings right before you transplant your heavy-feeding summer crops like tomatoes and cucumbers. The second golden window is early autumn. After you pull your dying summer plants, layer some fallen leaves and add another round of the oat and coffee mixture. The worms will spend the cool autumn months aggressively breaking down all the garden waste, turning it into rich compost before the winter freeze. It is important to remember that in the extreme heat of midsummer, worms might dive deep to stay cool, so building their population in the gentle weather of spring and fall is the key to year-round soil health. Now, let us talk about troubleshooting, because in the real world of homesteading and gardening, things happen. A common question is, won't a handful of oats just attract birds, ants, or field mice? It is a fair concern. If you leave the food exposed on the top, yes, every bird in the neighborhood will enjoy your oats. The absolute key is concealment. If you have heavy pest pressure, simply burying the handful under just 1 inch of topsoil is usually enough to hide the scent from surface scavengers. Another brilliant trick is the cardboard shield. Place your handful of food down, lay a piece of plain, wet, uncoated brown cardboard directly over it, and then cover the cardboard with your heavy mulch. The cardboard acts as an impenetrable physical barrier to birds and mice above, while creating the ultimate dark, damp safe haven for the worms below. Eventually, the worms and fungi will eat the cardboard itself, leaving zero waste behind. The most beautiful part of this method is the compounding, long-term effect it has on your property. This is not a quick fix that you have to completely restart every year. In year 1, you will notice that your soil feels a bit fluffier and your plants stay greener. By year 2, you will realize that your water bill has dropped significantly because the sponge-like worm castings are holding on to every drop of rain. By year 3, you will have the kind of rich, dark, crumbling soil that makes other gardeners incredibly jealous. Your plants will develop robust immune systems, easily fighting off blights and pests that used to devastate your crop. The population of earthworms will stabilize at a massive number, perfectly balanced with the amount of organic matter in the beds. Your garden evolves into a self-sustaining ecosystem where the amount of physical labor you do drops to near zero, while your harvest yields continue to climb higher and higher every single season. Once you see the results in a single bed, you will want to scale this up across your entire homestead, and doing so is incredibly easy. You can create dedicated, permanent feeding stations. Take a simple piece of PVC pipe or a cheap plastic bucket, drill dozens of 1-inch holes in the sides, and bury it halfway into the center of your garden bed. Drop your handfuls of coffee grounds and oats directly into the top of the pipe, throw in some kitchen vegetable scraps, and put a lid on it. You have just created a worm tower. The worms will travel through the soil, enter the holes in the pipe to gorge on the food, and then travel back out into the surrounding soil to deposit their castings among the plant roots. It is essentially an automated, natural fertilization system. You just drop a handful of cheap kitchen scraps into a tube once a week, and the earthworms do literally all the spreading, digging, and fertilizing for your entire garden. The greatest realization you can have as a gardener is that you do not have to fight nature to get a massive harvest. For years, we have been sold the lie that gardening requires expensive chemicals, heavy machinery, and endless hours of backbreaking digging. But the truth is, the most powerful, efficient gardening tool on the planet does not run on gasoline. It runs on oats and coffee grounds. By simply providing a dark, damp environment and adding that one magic handful to the surface of your beds, you unlock an explosive underground ecosystem. You multiply the earthworms, you let them build the tunnels for your roots, and you let them manufacture the perfect plant food. You save your money, you save your back, and you triple your harvest simply by letting nature do what it does best. Thank you so much for watching. If you are ready to put down the shovel and try this smart gardening method, please hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and share it with a friend who works too hard in their garden. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever noticed worms fleeing your garden when you till, or do you already use no-till methods? Drop a comment below and tell me about the soil in your backyard. I will see you in the next video. and happy, lazy gardening.